Hey guys! Part 12 of What If Naruto Awakens Sage Mode at a Young Age. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 25, Death of the Warhawk. Today, the Warhawk dies. And today, Konoha weeps for losing a veteran. I do not hate Danzo any longer, I actually respect him. But he is now a threat to Konoha, and I cannot allow him to live any longer. This is one time I am loath to utter these words, the words that have left my tongue so many a time. Death to all enemies of heaven. Shimura Danzo sat on his knees, a content aura about him. He was old, too old to keep up with this shinobi world. He'd done his part in shaping his home, and he could face this threat without any doubts. I would like to know one thing before you start. The old Warhawk's voice rang out in the forgotten Shimura hideout on the border of Hai no Kuni and the oceans that Mizu no Kuni sat on the other side of. The hideout itself was more like a fortress, and the room he was currently in could hold a few hundred people, as it was used as a war room in the past. This is where Danzo sat, and he was sure that this was where he would leave this world. He was not an arrogant, pompous fool. He knew that he made mistakes, but he realized now that even his mistakes had some meaning. The Uchiha massacre was one of those mistakes, but because of it, Konoha would soon have a powerful Uchiha to protect the great tree. One shinobi, a shinobi like Uzumaki, was worth 1,000 deaths, and Danzo knew. He knew that the death of the entire Uchiha clan would surely forge an incredibly powerful ninja in Uchiha Sasuke. There was doubt at first, of course. Sasuke was just an average, ordinary child who aspired to kill a man far out of his league. But now, with the assistance of a shinobi that even Danzo himself feared, he could rest easy in hell knowing that his home, his precious jewel, would be safe. And he knew he was going to hell. There was no place for men like him in heaven. But that only put a smile on his face. Because if a shinobi, a true shinobi, found himself in heaven, he didn't do his job right. How did you find me here? He asked the question he already knew deep down. Isn't it obvious, Danzo? A familiar voice rang out behind him. Usually, this voice would cause absolute fear and desperation, but now, at this very moment, this voice rang one thing in Danzo's weary ears. Hope. Uzumaki Naruto sighed, shaking his head. You do know, don't you? It wasn't a question. A humorless chuckle escaped the blonde's lips. You know, if you weren't such a fool, we could have been friends. And he meant it. Uzumaki Naruto and Shimura Danzo only had one thing that made them different. Understanding. Danzo was a die-hard veteran, a man who would give his own life for his people and home. He would slit the throats of children if that was what it took to keep his home safe. He would bite off his own tongue to keep his home's secrets out of enemy hands. He would personally set the fire that would burn down entire countries if that's what it took. Shimura Danzo was absolutely, without a doubt, a monster the likes of which would make the devil himself proud. Naruto was a die-hard loyal shinobi, a ninja who would die, come back from the dead, and die again if it meant he could protect his home and his people, and he could probably actually manage that. He would paint the land with red, and dance in the blood of Konoha's enemies if it kept the village safe. He would sacrifice his personal happiness for his home. He wouldn't just light the fire that would burn down entire countries, but he would be that fire. Uzumaki Naruto was the very definition of a monster, the likes of which would make the devil stop and take notes. These two men, these two shinobi, these two monsters were so similar it was scary, but they did have one difference, and that difference would take the life of one of them today. Naruto understood. He could feel the very essence of people, and mastered emotions. Danzo thought emotions to be a hindrance, a weakness that only got in the way. That's where the latter was wrong. There is no weakness in emotions, but strength. If one takes so much time suppressing their emotions, they can't truly reach their full potential. One is at their strongest when they are fighting for what they believe in, and without emotions, that belief is an empty excuse. Danzo spent so much time getting rid of his emotions that he forgot what was truly important. Everything that Naruto fought for, everything that Naruto ever did in the name of his home was not to put Konoha on top of the world as the superior shinobi village. What he fought for was actually simple. Peace. Naruto wished for nothing more than for his home to know peace. He wasn't going to lie and say that he didn't enjoy taking the lives of the sick and twisted, or that he wasn't excited for battle, but that was his tool, his sword, a way to focus his mind on what he truly wanted. Naruto was no idiot. He knew how the brain worked. And he knew that his mind told him that killing and slaughter was fun for the sole purpose of developing a coping mechanism. No one can possibly live the life he lived without doing so. Danzo's coping mechanism was to be rid of his emotions entirely, and in doing so, he lost sight in what really mattered. And he would pay for this mistake with his life. "Give me Shursui's eye, Danzo," Naruto ordered. His voice held no contempt, just absolute authority. "What could you possibly need that man's eye for, Uzumaki?" Danzo asked curiously. The root leader recognized the smile that found its way on the Jinchuriki's face. With a flick of his wrist, a figure Danzo thought he'd never see again appeared by the bringer of hope's side, his ever-stoic expression greeting him. A deep chuckle sounded out throughout the dark, cold, empty room. Danzo actually found this humorous. "I see," he started. "Then I will give you this eye and you only, Uchiha Itachi." His amused expression faded, and a serious one took its place. "You are the only one who is worthy of it, and the power it possesses." Danzo's aged hand reached up and removed the bandages from this head, exposing his hidden eye. There, in his socket, was Uchiha Shursui's Mangekyo Sharingan. Without even flinching or showing any sign that it hurt at all, Danzo tore the crimson orb from his socket, and held it out for Itachi to take. And he did. Itachi took his cousin's eye, the eye of the man he considered a brother, and he did something most would not expect. He bowed. Shimura Danzo forced Itachi to do something unforgivable, but Itachi forgave him. But Itachi was always like that. He was always the kind of person who would grant his enemies forgiveness before he sent them to their maker. And Danzo was surely going to meet whatever created him, today. "You served Konoha for more years than Itachi and I combined, and served them diligently," Naruto began. "But you have spent too much time in the darkness. It has consumed you, and now you are a threat to the great tree you helped safeguard." Naruto's gilded eyes stared into Danzo's dull black, an expression Danzo knew very well within them. "No one will know of your treachery. No one will curse your name. You will not be remembered nor forgotten. You, Shimura Danzo, will die within the shadows you have lived in your whole life." Danzo didn't say a word. He just stared at the true shinobi that stood before him. Danzo gave a small smile, his eyes closing shut. "In Root you have no name." He began the creed of Root. "You have no feelings. You have no past." These words were said by both Danzo and a random Root operative who stepped out of the shadows. "You have no future." A handful of operatives stepped out, reciting the words alongside their leader. "There is only the mission," Danzo finished, this time with every Root agent who accompanied him. By now, the entire room was filled with them. "And this is the last mission you will ever receive from me." He started. He took in a deep breath. "Uzumaki Naruto is now your leader. You will follow him, and when he needs to see, you will be his eyes. When he needs to strike, you will be his fist. You are all now his shadow, and he will guide you to where the darkness is needed, for you are the unseen ones who support the great tree of Konoha from the depths of the earth." As his eyes closed, he could see the back of one Uchiha Sasuke. So the brothers were reunited. Good. Now Konoha would have two watchful dragons. With his eyes closed, and the darkness embracing him, the face of Sarutobi Hiruzen appeared in his mind. It seemed that his old friend wouldn't let him die alone then. "You are the leaves bathing in the sun. I am the roots that grow in the dark, and now, be well, my friend." A cold blade ran across his throat, and he was gone before the first of the crimson hit the ground. Shimura Danzo was dead. Sigh. The wielder of the blade was at Naruto's side in an instant, his knee bent. "Hi, Shursho," Sai replied. "Burn his body, Sharingan and all." Erase him from existence, Naruto ordered his secret student. Sai nodded. When you're done, return to Konoha. Tell the rest of Na that you are in charge of the division under my command. I want the foundation ready. Ready for what, Shursho? He asked. War, Naruto answered. Root is to stay the way it is, in the shadows and separate from the Anbu. I will be leaving soon, and while I'm gone, Root will defend Konoha from any kind of threat. Sai saluted. Hi, Shursho, understood. Come Itachi, Sasuke, Gaara. We have a Hokage to report to, Naruto said. And with a golden flash, the four shinobi vanished. The entire time, Naruto held the same expression in his eyes, never fading. Respect. You were right. There is a lot of anger in the boy. Ibiki reported to Naruto, the two deep under Konoha beneath the ANBU headquarters. I thought so, Naruto responded. On the other side of a special mirror, the Root operative codenamed Sai sat strapped in a chair, which was the only thing inside the room he was being tortured in. I want to talk to him, Naruto stated. Nodding, Ibiki gave him the key for the door, and began to walk away. And Ibiki, Naruto began, stopping the Tianai commander, thank you. I think you're the only person who could actually break one of Danzo's men. Ibiki merely nodded again, leaving Naruto alone. He had just left the hospital, after having a conversation about privacy with Kurama. Sasuke was already heading for the location they would be training for the next month, and Naruto would join him soon. Taking a deep breath, Naruto steeled his nerves, his expressions slipping into cool stoicism. His mind and heart became an impenetrable fortress, the cold, uncaring shinobi side of him showing its face. He was Nezumi now, the embodiment of Anbu. He had used this side of himself since he woke up, not wanting to allow his emotions to weaken him. The words of the woman he called sister still stung his heart, and he loved two women who couldn't love him back because of his indecisiveness. He was almost as broken as the Root operative he was going to speak to. He left the room he had observed Ibiki work from, and slid the key into the door that held Sai behind it. Opening the door, he slid into the room, closing the entrance behind him. Sai didn't even bother to look at him. There was no blood, no bruises, no sign at all that the agent had been tortured. Nothing. But that's why Ibiki's methods were so beautiful. He didn't have to physically harm someone to put them through hell, which was why he was given the position of head of the TNI division. Some speculated that Ibiki was actually an Uchiha, in possession of the Sharingan, which would be an easy way to explain how he was so good at torture genjutsu. But Naruto knew that to be a lie. Ibiki was just that good at the art of pain, be it physical or mental. Naruto could feel Sai, and how broken he was. But most of all, he could feel something that pleased him a great deal. Anger. Sai was angry, incredibly so. All the anger he tried to suppress behind that fake smile of his was finally at the forefront of his mind, and there was nothing he could do to hide it. All Sai knew was anger, sheer, white-hot rage that flowed through him like a rampaging waterfall. Sai. Naruto started. That's when Sai finally acknowledged his presence. The Kamikage had never seen such a pissed-off expression before from anyone. He smiled. So you're angry then? Naruto began. Why? Why are you so angry? What did he do to you? The emotions were enough to paint the picture he needed. You can't say, huh? He's cursed you. Sai was silent for a moment, his rage-filled eyes falling to the ground. After a few moments of silence, he stuck his tongue out for Naruto to see, the curse mark Danzo used on his operatives greeting the blonde. Naruto hummed. The emotions Sai began to feel were so strong, so fierce, so vivid, that Naruto could actually see what Sai saw. And what he saw angered him. He made you kill him, right? Sai's eyes widened. He made you kill your closest friend, your brother, and then he made you forget. He made you forsake your own family for his own goals. He chuckled. It was a humorless chuckle. You hate him, don't you? It wasn't a question. You despise him. He sickens you, doesn't he? Again, it wasn't a question. Sai stayed silent, his rage never dimming. You know exactly who I am, and what I am about. We are both Konoha Anbu, no matter what Danzo tells you. We are brothers of the creed, Sai. Sai looked up into Naruto's eyes. Brothers, he said again. And as your brother, as all of Root's brother, I am promising you, by my blade as an Anbu operative of Konohagakure no Sato, that Danzo will die. Soon. Sai swallowed hard, his rage still there, but something else was beginning to blossom. Uchiha Sasuke wants him dead. Uchiha Itachi wants him dead. I want him dead. Naruto smiled. You too want him dead. His smile faded. Sai, I want you to become my student. Sai widened his eyes in shock. That hatred of yours. Danzo has taught you that it is a weakness. He has taught you that all emotion is weakness. I'm standing here before you, telling you now that he was wrong. You want to avenge your brother, you want to be one of mine, then accept me as you sensei, and let me teach you how to tame your hatred. Yes. Sai whispered, not even loud enough for Naruto to hear. But Naruto didn't need to hear his answer, because he felt it. That was a rather fast decision, Naruto observed. Sai was silent again, his eyes falling to the ground once more. For a moment he didn't move. He didn't even breathe. For a moment, Sai was gone. Where he was, Naruto wasn't going to intrude. He was thinking of his brother, the boy who was taken from him, and the man who took him. Naruto knew this, but said nothing. These were the feelings of a man who had nothing else but his anger. And his wrath. Okay then, Naruto whispered. I understand. Sai's eyes locked onto the Kamikich's, and where fear once traced his orbs when looking at the monster, there was nothing but resolve. Naruto cut the restraints off of him, and Sai rose as something new. Something darker. Welcome to the fold, Sai. He whispered. Sai's rage, his resolve, his emotions, everything vanished in a second, all hidden behind that fake smile he always wore. Thank you, Shirsho. He spoke with a silky smooth voice, the old Sai completely back, as if nothing had happened at all. Except this time, it was a facade, and not his attempt to produce human emotion. He was one of them now. Another. Naruto had another monster under his command. The bringer of hope smiled. Are you sure we have that long? Tsunade and Jiraiya were sitting in her office with multiple silencing seals littering the walls. Jiraiya nodded with a serious expression. He was the legendary sage of Mount Myoboku right now, not the perverted joker. Yeah, I'm sure. The Akatsuki can't afford to move for at least 3 years now, thanks to Naruto. They need to recruit and prepare. They may be criminals, but they aren't stupid, the opposite, actually. They're organized, especially now that we know they work out of aim. They have an entire hidden village backing them, and I'd put good money on them striking up an alliance with IWA, and possibly Suna, if we don't push the peace treaties. Tsunade sighed. As she rubbed her temples, she spoke. 3 years, that's not a long time to prepare for a war of this magnitude. Jiraiya poured the two of them sake, and Tsunade drank her cup in one gulp. And where the hell is your godson? What was so important that made him leave when he should be here, strategizing? She asked. The Sannin chuckled, sipping from his sake as well. If it's Naruto, you can trust that whatever he's doing, it's to prepare for this war. He's probably got an army for you by now. He chuckled again. Tsunade huffed. That kid's something else, that's for sure. She had never met, or even heard of anyone quite like him before. He's so serious, so powerful. It's hard to see him as human. Jiraiya nodded. I know how you feel. When I first met him, he was 4, and he could already kill seasoned jonin by then. He was silent for a moment, memories of the past flooding his mind. He reminded me so much of Minato I almost thought he was. There's something in those Namikaze genes, Haim, there has to be. He chuckled again. I wouldn't doubt it, Tsunade said before pausing. But before we left Tanzakugai, when he was informing us on what was going to happen, there was a moment when… I don't know, he seemed like a regular person, like a 13-year-old kid. It had been on her mind for a while now. When she brought up the reasoning why he brought back his father, she saw his humanity for a split second. In that second, He wasn't a hero, he wasn't a monster, he wasn't the God Slayer. He was just Naruto, just a kid. Jiraiya sighed. He knew she noticed it too. You still have a keen eye, Haim. He poured more sake, and drank before continuing. Naruto is a powerful shinobi. He is the kind of person who gets excited at the thought of battle. But these things don't make him something different than human. He's a person, a young person, and even though he's still extremely mature, he's still only 13. He just doesn't show that side of himself. He doesn't like it. Tsunade narrowed her eyes. Why not? Again, Jiraiya drank before answering. He hates himself. He answered simply, surprising Tsunade. What? The Hokage asked incredulously. My godson was born with his empathy gift. He was born with the ability to feel the emotions of everyone around him. His eyes met Tsunade's, and he could see the spark of understanding within them. He was the Jinchuriki, so the village hated him. Tsunade's hands clenched into fists, her anger visible on her pretty face. Yeah, Jiraiya began. Since his birth, he's felt the hatred of the villagers. Since birth he's felt the hatred of the Kyuubi. The Toad Sannin looked out the large window behind the woman he loved, the woman he loves. So he hates himself. He feels like his happiness is a bad thing, and tried his hardest to limit that happiness. Tried? Tsunade asked. The perverted smile on Jiraiya's face made Tsunade narrow her eyes at him. Two beautiful women managed to sway his opinion on the subject. He answered in a strange sense of pride and gusto. The Godame's narrow eyes never left her old teammate as she tried to determine whether or not he was being serious. After a long enough pause, she began. 2 women? Really? She asked. What the hell has that godson of yours been up to? Jiraiya laughed once again, the loud sound annoyingly contagious. He took to my teachings, Haim, that's what. His old man stopped after he hooked himself only one beauty, but Naruto, that glorious bastard, didn't stop there. The smile on his face really irritated Tsunade. He surpassed his father in every way. I couldn't be more proud. After a few moments of laughter, and a death glare from Tsunade, Jiraiya continued, his serious expression back. But all joking aside, those girls saved him from possibly the only thing that can actually harm him. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. And what would that be? She asked. Himself. Jiraiya replied, his voice deep and his tone weary. Before either of them could continue on about Naruto and his love life, and who was a part of said love life, a golden flash interrupted their conversation. Naruto, Sasuke and Gaara were suddenly in the Hokage's office, their knee bent. Hokage-sama. Naruto greeted as he stood. And what exactly have you been up to, Godslayer? Tsunade asked. Naruto's expression was serious and hard, slightly unnerving both Tsunade and Jiraiya. Shimura Danzo is dead. The Kamikage spoke, his voice holding multiple emotions that they couldn't determine. What? Tsunade asked, her voice wary. Shimura Danzo is dead, and Root is gone. Naruto replied, adding the part about Root at the end. The look on Tsunade's face was unnecessary. Naruto could feel the anger within Tsunade. You took the life of a Konoha-born shinobi without my permission, she yelled, standing from her seat and slamming her fists into her desk, cracking it. I am your Hokage, Jonin Uzumaki. You cannot act on your own. Naruto was silent, his face a stoic mask. I know what Danzo did, and that was wrong, but what you did was the same. You decided something on your own and acted without your Hokage's orders. Jiraiya was silent, not sure what he should do. Tsunade was right, Naruto shouldn't have acted on his own. But on the other hand, Naruto and Hiruzen were almost of one mind. They ran the village together. Naruto knew what Hiruzen would allow without even asking, and the Sandaime gave his second-in-command permission to what he thought was right, since the two had synced, and Naruto knew how the Hokage thought about certain things. But Tsunade was much different than her former sensei. That, coupled with the fact that she was new to the position, made it seem like he was either disrespecting her or challenging her position. Either way, it was hard to earn the respect of all the shinobi if someone that everyone looked up to was doing their own thing by themselves. Heim. Jiraiya started. But Tsunade wasn't having any of it. No, Jiraiya. You sought me out to take up this position. I am the Godame Hokage now. Tsunade sighed. Why didn't you ask me first, Naruto? I didn't have to ask, Hokage-sama. Naruto began, surprising Tsunade with his blunt assumption. Danzo needed to die. He continued. You know this very well. Tsunade opened her mouth to speak, but Naruto started again. No, I did not ask, but that's why I am here, Tsunade. He used her name instead of title, making sure she would understand. Words do not have to be spoken between us. I am your very emotion. When you feel like something should be done, I act. When you want something to be done, it is done. I am your will, your thought given form. That is my role. I may not have my mask anymore, but I am Anbu for life. Tsunade just stared at the blonde, still not able to completely grasp what he was capable of. Again, the new Hokage sighed, rubbing her temples. You make it hard to stay mad at you know that? Taking a sip from her sake that miraculously survived her wrath from before, Tsunade leaned back into her chair. And Root is gone? The operatives are dead? Naruto's eyes met Tsunade's, and something was said. Yes, he replied, but the Hokage wasn't convinced. But the look he gave her told her that whatever did happen was for the sake of the village. Again, Tsunade sighed. We were just talking about how long we have before the Akatsuki become active. Jiraiya began. 3 years is what Itachi said. What do you think? He asked. Naruto turned to his godfather. 3.5, now that so many of their members are either dead or missing. Not to mention that Hoshigaki Kisame no longer has his sword. Sasuke smiled, his eyes still closed. Tsunade began to wonder when he'd removed the cloth. It had been quite a while now. What exactly are you planning on doing with that sword? The Godame asked, reluctant to even call the thing a sword. Naruto shrugged. I'll probably hold on to it until I see the Mizukage again. He answered truthfully. Mei will want it back in Kiri's possession, and I'll give it to her. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. The Naruto she knew was a die-hard Konoha shinobi, someone who would do absolutely anything to assure Konoha's safety. For him to give another village, even if said village was their ally, something so valuable as one of the great blades of Kiri, it confused the slug Sannin a great deal. She was about to voice her opinion on the subject, but was interrupted when 2 Anbu operatives flickered into the office, kneeling. Tsunade once again opened her mouth to address the Anbu, but like before, she was beat to it. Saru Ushi, Naruto greeted the Nara and Unstoppable Bull. Without saying a single word, Saru took out a long blue scarf, and raised it for Naruto to see. Ushi found this on our way into the village this morning. Ushi grunted. It was around a tree just outside the walls. He finished, handing the scarf to his commander. We sought you out the moment we found it, Taicho. Naruto narrowed his eyes, examining the familiar scarf. This is Konohamaru's, there's no mistake. Naruto nodded. Tsunade stood. What would Sensei's grandson be doing outside the village walls? She asked. Konohamaru was like family to her and Jiraiya, and even though he wouldn't admit it, to Orochimaru, too. His mother had been special to all of them, especially in the snake's case. I told him to leave it behind if there was ever a reason he had to leave the village. Naruto continued. It means there's trouble, and Konohamaru is trying to let us know. He turned to Gaara, who nodded before disappearing in a Sand Shunshin body flicker. He must be following someone who isn't supposed to be leaving. He took in a deep breath, his eyes closing. You mean someone defecting? Tsunade asked. Jiraiya felt the natural energy seek Naruto out like a beacon, surrounding him in a powerful aura of nature. Maybe, the blonde replied. He opened his eyes, greeting the Sannin in the room with slit, golden eyes. We'll know in a moment. Concentrating his chakra, Naruto stretched his empathy to its limits, covering the entire village in his presence. He felt everyone, everything. He was everywhere at once, his will flowing through the village. At that moment, Naruto felt as if he was Konoha, as if he were the trees, the ground, the sky, the people. It was straining on him, but so very beautiful at the same time. And then he noticed it. Someone was gone missing. Taken. Naruto turned to Sasuke, the Uchiha turning with him. No one spoke. The office was silent. And then Sasuke spoke, his voice low. Who? He asked. Who took her? Naruto shook his head. I don't know. He answered honestly. Shall we find out? He asked with a small smirk on his face. Sasuke responded with a nod. Outwardly, he looked calm, relaxed, but on the inside, he was furious. Someone would dare walk into Konoha, into his home, and take his girl? No. They would soon know their folly. They made a mistake if they thought they'd get away with touching her, touching Sakura. He'd show them all. Whoever they were, he would show them his new eyes. It was time. What's going on? Tsunade asked. Who was taken? She was a little confused, and she always was when Naruto used his little empathy trick. What was it? Unity? Haruno Sakura is gone. Naruto explained. Someone has taken her from the village. Konohamaru most likely witnessed the kidnapping, and followed. He chuckled. Not even a shinobi yet, and he's already acting like one. I think I might need to start his training a little early. Tsunade's eyes widened. Naruto just let slip that he was going to personally train the Sandame's grandson. That was actually a slightly terrifying idea. If the boy was anything like his grandfather, he'd be one scary shinobi if he was taught by the Kamikage. Naruto put a hand on Sasuke's shoulder, smiling at the Hokage. Hokage-sama, we will return Sakura back before the day is over, he said confidently. Tsunade blinked, confused. The way he was stating it, it was almost like he was asking for permission. That's when she realized it. Two Anbu agents, men who served under him for years, were present. He was showing who their leader was now, who their Hokage was. The Sandame was a man respected by everyone in the village, and the Anbu only followed him and Naruto, which was going to make Tsunade's job a whole lot harder. But if Naruto showed that he respected Tsunade, and took his orders from her, then they would follow her orders without question. That's how much Naruto was respected. His word was greater than the Hokages within Anbu. Hi. Return our genin back to us, Jonin Uzumaki, Chunin Uchiha. She turned to the Anbu. It was time to test her authority. Dismissed, she ordered. To her relief, the operatives followed her orders, vanishing with a flicker. Naruto smiled. Of course he knew what was bugging Tsunade. His empathy saw sure to that. He knew the moment he named her Hokage. Her doubts about the village and its shinobi were many, but Naruto was going to make sure everyone followed the last senju before he left. It was a promise. But right now, there was something more important. Because right now, it was time to hunt. Uzumaki Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke vanished in a golden flash, leaving behind the Godame Hokage and Sannin of Mount Myaboku. Tsunade sat down, passing another cup of sake to her former teammate, filling one up for herself as well. I don't know if I can handle that guy, Jiraiya, she whispered. Sighing, she downed her cup in one gulp, before pouring herself another. Sure you can, Haim, Jiraiya assured her. You're Senju Tsunade, the greatest kunoichi to walk the elemental nations. You can do anything. He took a sip of his sake. Naruto will be gone for 3 years. That's more than enough time to establish yourself as the new Hokage. He waved his hand in the air. And it's really only the Anbu you have to worry about. The other shinobi all welcome you with open arms. And if I know that kid, he'll most likely fix your problem for you before we leave. It was true. Naruto would most likely talk with the Anbu, ordering them to follow their new Hokage like they followed him and the Sandame. It was just the kind of person he was. He knew people's worries without even hearing them, and then fixed them, getting rid of any problems before they even popped up. That's why he was the second in command. He made the Sandame's life a lot easier. I sure hope so, Tsunade replied. The two were silent as they drank their sake, enjoying each other's company. It was going to be a long couple of years, that's for sure. Konohamaru was startled when a golden light flashed right in front of him. knocking him off his feet. What's the big idea, Naruto and I?" the Sarutobi boy asked. He stopped when he saw, or more accurately, felt, Sasuke. He didn't know why, but he was so scared of the Uchiha at that moment that he could hardly breathe. A dark aura that felt like it swallowed you whole would do that to you, especially if you were 9. Naruto felt Konohamaru's panic, and placed a hand on his shoulder, instantly relaxing him. "It's okay, Konohamaru, and I'm sorry for scaring you." Sasuke wasn't meaning to leak out major amounts of killing intent, he just couldn't help it. Someone had Sakura, she was probably terrified, and waiting for him to save her, it drove him crazy. But again, only on the inside, because on the outside, Sasuke was the picture of cool calmness. It's okay," Konohamaru began. "I'm just glad you finally showed up. Did you find my scarf?" he asked in hope. Naruto smiled, nodding. "Yes, we did." The blonde handed the little monkey his scarf, chuckling at how excited he was to be reunited with it. "But we need to hurry, Konohamaru. Where did they take Sakura?" Konohamaru instantly straightened, and Naruto found that interesting, very, very interesting. "They made camp just over this hill, Naruto and I. It's a good thing, too. I don't think I could follow them any longer." Indeed, Naruto could see the exhaustion on the boy. It was actually impressive that he could follow these people so far, and without being detected. Yes, Naruto was now very interested in his Gigi's grandson. "I'm proud of you, Konohamaru," the Uzumaki said. "You'll make a fantastic ninja one day." He smiled at the boy's excitement. "But right now you need to stay here, okay? We are going to go get Sakura back, and then we'll all go back to the village." Again, he placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. "You're a hero, Konohamaru. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise." His words were emphasized when Sasuke placed his hand on the Sarutobi's other shoulder. "Thank you, Konohamaru," he said before vanishing in a Shunshin body flicker. Naruto smiled, nodding, before he too vanished in a swirl of leaves. It was time for the Uchiha wrath to scar the earth once more. "Damn it, we've been here too long, you know," a red-haired woman shouted, standing. "If you weren't such a fat ass, we could have been halfway to Oto by now, Jirobo." A man who was much bigger than the rest stood, a snarl marking his face. "Why don't you come over here and say that, Taiya?" Jirobo mocked. The little bitch was all bark. "Don't tempt me, fat boy," Taiya retorted. "Okay, children, that's enough of that." A man with gray hair and sickly features spoke, he too standing. "You know what will happen if we start to fight each other. Orochimaru-sama will have our heads, and that's only if we're lucky." "Sakan is right, we don't have time for your shit, Taiya, Jirobo," another man with dark skin and beady eyes scolded. "We should get moving now. I don't know about all of you, but I'd rather get out of these forests before Konoha wises up and notices that one of their own is missing." "Oh please, Kidamaru, do you really think that place is going to miss this little bitch? She's worthless, a little girl playing ninja. They'd probably thank us for our services." Taiya laughed. "Either way, we should get moving. I'm getting a bad feeling," Kidamaru said. He didn't know what it was, but it felt eerily similar to when Orochimaru was upset and bloodthirsty. It was like a dark, ominous, malevolent feeling surrounded them, encasing them all around. It felt like they were trapped. That was why it was strange, because if there was anyone even in their vicinity, his spiderwebs would have told him. "Right." Taiya sighed dramatically. "You always have a bad feeling." She then turned to her robust comrade, sneering. "Make yourself useful, fat ass." She pointed with her thumb over her shoulder. "Carry the barrel with the girlie in it." Jirobo glared at the foul-mouthed redhead before he walked over to the barrel which they had stuffed the pretty little Konoha Jin in. He really didn't like Taiya, and if he knew just how terrible her personality was, he would have killed her the day they were chosen. She was bossy, snooty, and cursed worse than an old man. In his personal opinion, she was the worst kind of kunoichi, big bite, and even bigger bark. Reaching out to pick up the barrel all seemed normal. The wind blew in the same direction as it had previously that day, the sun was still lounging in the sky, and the forest was just as thick with trees as ever. There wasn't a sound other than their voices for the longest time, that, and the wind, but the moment Jirobo was about to touch the barrel, another sound filled their camp. A sickening, all too familiar sound of metal slicing flesh caught everyone's attention. The rest of the sound four turned to look at Jirobo, who was strangely still. Only a few seconds passed in that eerily silent stillness, but the moment it ended, all hell broke loose. Aha! The sound of Jirobo screaming in absolute pain washed over the forest, actually managing to startle his comrades. The orange-haired man turned to the others, and their eyes immediately widened. His hands, both of his hands, were gone, cut from his arms with scary precision. Shit! Tayuya shouted as she got into position, back to back with the others. Who the fuck? Who's out there, damn it? She had her flute in her hands, positioned to play her deathly melodies. Her voice, however, was unheard, because Jirobo's screams were still mighty. Before Tayuya, or her comrades, for that matter, could tell the man who could put an Akimichi to shame to be quiet, he suddenly stopped screaming, and slumped to the grass-covered ground. A kunai was pierced through his throat, the cold steel glinting in the small bead of sunlight finding its way through both the clouds and tree cover. Dead. In mere seconds, a man who could fight on equal ground with a highly ranked chunin, or low-ranked jonin, was taken out of this world with what looked like relative ease. Child's play. Tayuya, Kidamaru, and Sakan all gulped, readying their curse marks. Something was out there, in the forest, and it wasn't friendly. Did you really think Konoha would allow you to get away with one of our genin? A voice asked. It belonged to someone young, but the point of origin was impossible to decipher. The voice rang out all around them, sounding calm yet furious. Did you really think we'd just let you take one of our own? His voice seemed even angrier, and the feeling of absolute darkness was 10 times thicker, threatening to suffocate them. This was more than Orochimaru. This was the definition of darkness. Of evil. Fuck you! Tayuya shouted. Show yourself, fuckface. She regretted her words the moment she said them, because the instant the last word left her tongue, the dark, malevolent feelings surged, and visions of her horrible, gruesome death filled her mind, and it felt like she was being engulfed by a giant, dark blue demon with the face of the devil himself. It was colder, so much colder now. The wind felt like mini blades, slashing away at their skin, and the sun seemed to dim, like it was turning its gaze away from what was about to happen to them. For the first time in a long time, the sound for, what was left of it, shook with fear Orochimaru couldn't ever hope to install in them. It was a fear that something was coming, something worse than death, and far more painful. It was sheer terror. And then, the feeling vanished, but something else appeared. Sasuke and Naruto were before them, what was left of the people who dared to touch the Uchiha's lover. A harsh silence fell over them. Naruto smiled, and brought his hand in front of Sasuke's face. The sound of him snapping his fingers filled the forest. The bandages around Sasuke's eyes began to burn away. The Uchiha mirrored his Shursho's smile. Gaze upon our enemies, Uchiha Sasuke. Naruto spoke. Sasuke opened his eyes. His crimson, looped eyes with the 3-pointed star sitting in the middle. Their screams went unheard, lost in the ever-present forests of Hai no Kuni. Chapter 26, Hope's Blade. He ran as fast as he could, gasping for air as his lungs burned. He'd been running for so long now, but no matter how fast he was, no matter how far he made it, they were always right behind him, always there. He couldn't escape, no one could. Fear. He felt fear the likes of which he had never felt before, so scared, so terrified that they'd inevitably grow tired of this cruel game of cat and mouse and finally catch him. He was the mouse. The fact that he had lasted this long was something of a miracle, if he was an honest man. Considering that he was a shinobi, though, he would swear that he was just too skilled for them, that is, if he survived. And he wasn't a stupid ninja either. He knew what was coming after him, what was hunting him. There wasn't a more terrifying predator out there, not that he knew of, at least. Death followed him, whether it would be quick and painless, or slow and excruciating was still to be determined. The odds were slim, all but non-existent, but when one felt fear such as this, logic went out the window. So he ran. They had found him in a backwater dump that was almost too pitiful to call an actual village. He didn't even know the damn name, a few days ago, and ever since, he had been on the run, trying, fruitlessly, to escape. They had already gotten his team. Their screams still echoed in his mind, terrorizing his nightmares. He had only been able to sleep once since they started following him, and only for an hour, but that hour had been nothing but terrible nightmares. Even as he ran, he could still hear the agonizing screams of his teammates, their shouts of pain and sorrow causing him to twitch every other second. His shinobi training told him that his current condition was a mixture of an unhealthy amount of adrenaline and sleep deprivation, probably coupled with his already certifiable paranoia. All those things were practically in the shinobi job description, and shouldn't affect him as much as it was. But again, logic and clear-headedness was long gone, and all he could think of at the moment was how scared his was. It was almost pitiful, really. He was a damn jonin, elite of his village, a veteran of 10 years in his own right. He shouldn't have been so terrified, but what was chasing him wasn't average shinobi. No. The things that were hunting him were not human. They were what went bump in the night. They were what people whispered about, the monsters in the shadows. They were what every enemy of Konoha had nightmares about. His musings were instantly stopped when a sharp sensation in his leg caused him to scream out in pain. It felt like multiple, razor-sharp teeth had chomped down on his calf. Looking down, he realized that it was exactly that. A dog, which looked more wolf than a dog, had his leg in its maw, its fangs sunk deep into exposed flesh. Blood gushed, and more screams were given to the world, as the beast twisted and jerked, shredding his leg into tender pieces of bloody meat. It was a gruesome sight for anyone. The canine's low growls were a scary addition to its already frightening visage of terrifyingly sharp teeth. He fell to the earth below the trees, groaning in pain as he hit the ground with a loud thud. He was still. The large wolf dog landed next to him, growling at him menacingly. The beast was huge, larger than normal dogs or wolves, big enough to be mounted, really. The canine crept closer and closer to the man, not yet finished with tearing his flesh apart. Suddenly, a loud whistle rang out, from a person's lips, no doubt, and the beast immediately stopped. The man still wasn't moving, but he could not hide his fear. It was almost palpable, and nothing could escape them. That's when they landed, one after the other, surrounding the man they had just hunted. 9 of them stood around him, and even though he didn't know it, they could see into his very soul, or feel it. "There's no reason to pretend that you are unconscious, Jin." One of them spoke to him, using his name no less. "We know you are not." Jin slowly turned, having landed on his stomach, and almost lost his breath when he saw their eyes. All of their eyes were molten gold, even the dog's. "Why are a Wagakure shinobi occupying Kusagakure again?" Another spoke, his voice young but commanding. His tone was deep, the voice of a commander, of a legend. I don't. Jin tried to speak, but the fear overwhelmed him. So many golden eyes staring down at him, it was too much for him to handle. He was never prepared for this. There was no training that could have helped him in this situation. He was a dead man, and he knew it. "Enough." A third voice spoke. He looked at the one next to him. "Take the information by force," he ordered. And with that, Jin was met with gilded eyes that made his entire world turn red. "Done." The man ordered to take the information responded. It had only been a single second. "Always impressive, Karasu." The one to give the order replied. "Let us leave this place." The one who asked Jin the question began. With a nod, all 9 of them, plus the dog, disappeared, the body of Jin going with them. After they were gone, it was like they had never been there. No trace of their chakra, no trace of their footprints, nothing. They were ghosts in the wind, and nothing could find them. More importantly, nothing could stop them. Nothing. Terumi sighed. It had nearly been 4 years, 3 years and 6 months, to be exact, since the last time she had seen or even heard from the person she loved. Sitting at her desk in her office, even after so many years, The Godane Mizukic still couldn't get used to paperwork. Mei's mind couldn't help but wonder. The blonde shinobi was always on her mind, and if she knew Anko at all as much as she thought she did, and she did, Naruto saw to that years ago, then they were both in the same boat. They missed him. They missed Uzumaki Naruto. Anko had stayed in the village ever since she was requested for an S-ranked mission. It took some deceptive convincing before the Hokage would allow one of her jonin to stay in another village for so long, but after Naruto's father vouched for the importance of Anko's task, Tsunade relented. Midarashi Anko was tasked with strengthening the ties with Konoha and Kiri for the coming war. Mei could only chuckle at that. Kirigakure, no, Mizu no Kuni as a whole was indebted to the bringer of hope. His actions in Konoha, personally protecting the Mizukiage during a foreign invasion, reached the water country fairly quickly, and the act only made the people of Mizu remember how much they loved their savior. Uzumaki Naruto's name was sang and shouted to the heavens. Not a child in the entire country forgot his name. He was revered in both Hai no Kuni and Mizu no Kuni as a hero, an icon. That, however, had led to the heart-wrenching decision she and Anko had made 3 years ago. It hurt their heart to keep something from him, to keep this away from him, but they told themselves that it was for his sake as much as hers. If the information left Kiri, it could have been used against Naruto, to hurt him. She would not be responsible for harming him, and Anko thoroughly agreed, if reluctant at first. Thus, they compromised. Anko would stay silent if she could stay in Kiri, and assist the woman she became to care for a great deal with anything she needed. Mei accepted, gratefully, and Anko moved in the day she decided. She wasn't going to leave Mei in her time of need. It wasn't easy either, to keep something like that a secret, even from her own village and country. Only a handful of trusted people knew. Ao, her most trusted and loyal shinobi, had been the first person, besides Naruto's father and Anko, Mei trusted to know. His assistance was crucial for them to pull it all off, after all. Then Anko got tired of running all of the errands, so Mei had to trust another, ending with her telling the only members of the newly formed 7 swordsmen of Kiri, Chojuro and Zabuza. And whatever Zabuza knew, Haku knew, so that made 6 people, including Anko and Minato, who knew her tremendous secret. Again, Mei sighed as she signed off on another piece of paper, unable to get Naruto out of her head. Even now, nearly 4 years later, she could still remember his warm skin against hers. She could still remember the way his heart beat, so strong and unwavering. She could still remember all the naughty things she and Anko did to him, did with him. Mei immediately shook her head of those thoughts. She was on the job, as boring as it may be, she couldn't afford to get, well, horny. A knock at the door made her sigh in relief. She needed something to take her mind off the person she loved. "Come in," she spoke gently. The door opened and Ao walked in, a serious and grim look on his face. "Mizukiage-sama," he began. "An ambassador from IWA has just entered the village," he explained. Mei's eyes narrowed. Iwagakure had declared open war on Konoha with their failed invasion. Whenever any country tried to contact them, they were completely silent. Their borders were closed off to outsiders, and all trade was immediately stopped. It had been like that for 4 years now. So why was an Iwagakure ambassador walking into her village? "We spotted him 5 minutes ago. Asked him for his papers. He seems smug, Mei-sama, like he has something we can't afford to decline. I have no idea what that something is, but I don't think we're going to like it." "Where is he now?" Mei asked. "He's checked himself into a room," Ao replied. "I have our hunter Nin watching as we speak." "How many guards?" she asked. 10. "They look like jonin, professionals, that's for sure," Ao explained. Mei let a deep breath slip past her lips. "Get me Chojuro, Zabuza and Haku," the Mizukiage ordered. "I'll meet you all in the Blue Room." The Blue Room was a secret bunker that was built underneath the Mizukiage's office during the founding of Kirigakure. S-ranked missions were given in the Blue Room, and shinobi had to have the highest level of clearance to even know about the existence of the place. Ao nodded before vanishing in a burst of speed, carrying out his leader's orders dutifully, like a real man was supposed to. When Ao was gone, Mei opened one of the drawers of her desk, taking out a single piece of paper. She read it, the letter Naruto had left her when he liberated Mizu from Yagura. It still made her warm inside. A small smile found its way on her face, before she put the letter back into her desk, locked it, and stood. "Here we go," she whispered. With those words, Mei left her office, intent on finding Anko. Nezumi-2, Ukami, Karasutu and Sara dashed through fields of Kusagakure, their forms mere blurs to the untamed eye. Ukami, the squad leader, led the four-man cell, his wolf-masked form leading his pack in the direction of Konoha. Karasutu and Sara were on his flanks, keeping his pace fairly easily. Nezumi-2 was at the rear, therefore his fast reaction time. If the ones following them tried to strike out, Ukami trusted Nezumi-2 to do what was needed to protect the squad. He was right. The earth beneath them began to rumble, and before most could react, earthy spikes shot up out of the ground, flying at their retreating forms with a speed that was meant to kill without mercy. Nezumi-2 was not most shinobi. Spinning, the blonde-haired Anbu turned, his hands flying through hand seals faster than even Ukami could hope to. He threw his palms towards the spikes that would have killed his team if he wasn't fast enough, and gale force winds slammed into them, ripping the murderous earth asunder. And then Nezumi-2 stopped. Karasutu turned to look at him, her long, crimson hair flying around in the wind. Nezumi-2 nodded, and without hesitation, his squad was gone, their speed increasing exponentially. He turned to the direction those who wished to harm his comrades were about to appear, and inhaled deeply. He was about to do an awful thing for the sake of his home. Four agents of Golem, the Awagakure equivalent of the Anbu, blinked into existence in front of Nezumi-2, their pure white masks staring at his mouse-shaped one. They stopped. Nezumi was the codename given to the greatest shinobi of the Leaf, or that's what other villages had come to believe. The mask, the title, it was shrouded in glory and awe, both the first and second bearers being classified as SS-ranked shinobi, and a flea-on-sight order. No one knew who the new Nezumi-2 was, but they knew he was no pushover, and worthy of wearing the Godslayer's face. The one closest to the blonde Anbu agent, a brown-haired man with an impressive muscle mass, turned and looked at his black-haired comrade, an obvious woman and most likely the leader of the cell. A tense, stiff silence fell upon all of them, every shinobi ready to strike or defend at a moment's notice. No one moved. The wind was the only sound that could be heard. Nezumi-2 was outnumbered. There was 4 of them, and 1 of him. It wasn't fair. For them. Without a sound, the 4 Golem operatives retreated back in the direction of IWA. They couldn't risk engaging him, they knew they were outmatched. And for what was to come, their village needed every shinobi and kunoichi available. An army was needed for war, after all. Nezumi-2 exhaled deeply, glad that no blood had to be spilled today. A battle won without conflict was the only true victory he cared for. He stayed there for a few more minutes. He had to make sure the enemy had truly retreated back to their country. He wouldn't let anyone hurt his people. After he was sure reinforcements weren't coming, Nezumi-2 looked to the sky, wondering what his son was doing, hoping that he'd return to the village soon. They needed him. And then, Nezumi-2 vanished in a gilded flash. He reappeared next to Karasutu, the woman acknowledging his return with a nod. Even through her chrome mask, the blonde could tell that the woman was smiling. Ukami turned to him, and Nezumi-2 informed him of the events that transpired not 2 minutes ago through Anbu code. Nodding, Ukami turned and kept his speed the same. They'd arrive in Konoha in a few hours if they didn't stop, and they needed to get there as soon as possible. Their mission was a complete success, and the Hokage needed to know what they learned. With speed and grace only the Anbu possessed, the small contingent of Rohan made their way to their home. They had to report to the Godame. Mitarashi Anko walked next to the Mizukage with a concerned expression. They were headed back to Mei's office to speak with an ambassador from Awagakure no Sato. She was nervous, anxious, more so than she should have been. There was a sound reason for this, though. "Where's," she began. "Safe," Mei replied, knowing what the woman was already going to ask. "I have Zabuza and Chojuro with her, Haku too," she explained. Anko nodded, slightly sighing. They'd be able to handle mostly anything together. Since they rejoined Kiri, Zabuza's and Haku's growth rate was incredible. Zabuza was now easily S-ranked material, and Haku had already made Jonin, his Kekkei Genkai, invaluable to the village. Chojuro had studied under Zabuza, and although the kid had little to no confidence in himself, everyone knew he was competent. Good. This could be a trap. We have no idea what they know or why they're here, Anko said. She sighed deeply. I don't like this, she admitted. I don't like it either, Mei began. But I cannot simply dismiss him. It would be disrespectful. Technically, Shichi no Kuni has done nothing to Mizu. I was present during an invasion of another village. I would have been collateral damage, a casualty of war if I was harmed. They haven't done anything to us yet, so I have to keep appearances. While it was widely known that Uzumaki Naruto freed Mizu no Kuni from the madness of Yagura, in the shinobi world, that meant little to nothing. Alliances stronger than the one Naruto had with Kiri were broken for the most asinine reasons. IWA was probably hoping to play on Kirigaku's greed, expecting them to take the shinobi's path. Unfortunately for them, Naruto wasn't just a foreign shinobi to the Mizukage, but something far, far more important and dear. They're definitely here to strike a bargain with you. They want Kirigaku to assist with the war against Konoha, Anko explained. She went silent for a moment, her mind coming to a conclusion she thoroughly dreaded. It's going to be another world war, isn't it? Mei looked at the woman who shared her love for a certain Uzumaki through the corner of her eyes. I think so, yes, she admitted. Iwagakure has had an extreme hate for Konoha since the Yondaime crushed them in the last world war. What Naruto did to them was like adding more oil to the fire. I'm tired of it, Anko stated. This constant fighting, I hate it. Why can't everyone just understand each other and get along? She asked rhetorically. Not everyone is like our Naruto, Mei retorted, smiling. Anko chuckled, mirroring Mei's amused expression. That's for damn sure. Soldier Boy's one of a kind. Anko still had the message she received a few days after arriving in Kirigakure. It was from Naruto, explaining that he would be gone for a while, and that he wouldn't be able to see her for a few years. That had been less than happy news, but he made up for it at the end of the letter. Apparently, her knight in shining armor took it upon himself to rid her life of Orochimaru once and for all, something she was going to thoroughly thank him for the next time she saw him. With Naruto in her mind, Anko felt more confident. Even if there was to be another world war, Naruto and his father would be able to handle it. Anko, and Mei as well, probably, was of the opinion that both Naruto and Minato looked at other S-ranked shinobi and laughed. They were the pinnacle of strength, and the scariest tag team in history, Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama the only ones she could think of that even resembled them. And the latter only lasted a couple of years, if that. Do you think he'll hate me? Mei suddenly asked, her tone weak. For keeping it a secret from him? She elaborated. Anko looked at Mei with hardened eyes. Of course he's not going to hate you. He can never hate you, he loves you, idiot. She scolded. Her eyes were narrowed. Stop thinking like that, will you? You know him just as well as I do. You know he'll understand, even if he's upset for a little while. They had been over this so many times already, but no matter the amount, Mei still doubted her decision. She was afraid of what Naruto would think of her after he found out that she kept something so huge from him for so long. But Mei tried to begin, but Anko wasn't having any of it. No buts. Naruto loves us both more than anything, he'll understand. Anko didn't have to explain to her that Naruto's empathy ability would do everything for her. They didn't even need to speak for him to understand. Now toughen up, pussy, we've got an asshole to scare shitless. Mei chuckled in amusement. Anko sure did have a colorful speech when she wanted, that's for sure. And her tough love was almost as forward as her sexual advances. You're right, Mei replied. Now's not the time for self-doubt. I've got to be strong for my village. Her confidence back, Mei only had a smirk on her face as they reached the building her office resided in. Anko, on the other hand, wasn't fully able to take her own advice. While she knew Naruto still loved her, and probably always would, she wasn't sure what their future looked like now, not when Mei had something that physically tied them together. She was scared that she would be forgotten after he discovered their secret, and that made her heart hurt. Walking into the building, the two kunoichi saw 7 IWA Jonin standing in the waiting room, watching Mei with indifferent eyes. It wasn't until the men noticed Anko's Hitai did their neutral expressions turn dark. They obviously disliked and distrusted Konoha shinobi, that much was clear with a single glance. The IWA-born shinobi's hostile demeanors caused the two hunter-nin that were previously watching the foreigners from the shadows to make themselves known, their intimidating masks a warning. The IWA-nin were not in Shichi no Kuni anymore. Mizu was their territory, their backyard. They were surrounded with more water than they ever had been, and any shinobi worth their jonin rank knew the real reason Mizu never fell to any other country during wars, even when their own was wrecked with civil war. The shinobi of Mizu no Kuni were at their best near, on, or in water, and they could swallow up entire platoons with one fell swoop if they had to. Without any fuss, Anko and Mei entered the Mizuki's office, and were immediately met by Ao, Mei's trusted assistant in everything since the rebellion. Showing the proper respect the Mizuki deserved, Ao deeply bowed to his leader, ushering her to sit at her seat. As Mei sat, Anko slowly made her way to stand behind the auburn-haired woman, to her left. Her right was always reserved for Ao. He had earned that right with his service and loyalty to the auburn-haired Kage. As Mei took her seat, she took the time to examine the man she was about to play word games with. Tall, black hair and a strong chin, the apparent ambassador of Iwagakure no Sato was exactly what one would think a shinobi from the stone would look like. The man was dressed in a red kimono. Mei raised a single eye. He was possibly related to the daimyo of Shichi no Kuni. That was a clever tactic. While killing the messenger was rarely practiced, it still occurred, even today. Sending someone of royal blood made that decision all but impossible, lest Mei start an all-out war between the royal courts. Behind the ambassador, 2 shinobi stood, 1 female, 1 male. The female was young, around Naruto's age, she guessed. Her faint smirk spoke of arrogance, but her eyes spoke of experience. This girl was no doubt a jonin, and extremely talented at that. She had shoulder length, black hair and dark eyes. She wore the typical jonin wear of her village, and she had the whole androgynous thing going for her. Next to the female was a tall and brawny man, with dark eyes and short, dark gray hair. A beard and large, bulbous nose finished his appearance, his traditional IWA jonin wear matching that of the teen next to him. With further inspection, Mei narrowed her eyes. She knew this man. He was the Tsuchikage's son-in-law, Kitsuchi, a former golem. The man's appearance did not bode well with the Mizukage. All of her examining only took 5 seconds, her Kage-level intelligence at work. Clearing her throat, Mei began what would most likely end in heated words. Hopefully, no one would get hurt. Hello, Ambassador-san, I am Teremi Mei, Godane Mizukage of Kirigakure no Sato. She introduced herself formally. What has brought Iwagakure no Sato to my village? The shinobi behind the ambassador glared at Anko with barely contained rage. They hadn't expected to see a Konoha-nin. My name is Kyoya, and as you already know, I am an ambassador for Iwagakure. Kyoya began. My business is with Kiri, though, and not for the ears of a Konoha kunoichi, he said with a calm tone. While there was no venom in the man's voice, there was plenty hate in his stare. If possible, I'd like for her to leave for the duration of our conversation. He smiled at Mei, his deceptive facial features trying to make her see him as nothing but a decent person. Mitarashi Anko stays, Kyoya-san? Now hurry up and get to why it is you're here, Mei commanded. While each of their countries signed the armistice drawn up by Konoha during the conclusion of the last war, the entire world knew where Shichi no Kuni stood. And Kiri was not willing to risk the precious alliance that Uzumaki Naruto had single-handedly created. War was such an easy thing to start, and simple treaties that were nothing but simple ink on paper meant little to nothing. Yes, well then, I'll be blunt. Kyoya began, scrunching his face at Anko. The Tsuchikage has called upon the aid of Kirigakure, and all villages flying her flag under the pretext of bipartisanship. Mei and Anko narrowed their eyes as the man continued. We're at open war with Hai no Kuni, and while we won't ask you to participate in anything on an official level, we will suspect a partisan partner to help fund what is inevitable to come. Anko's eyes were narrowed the entire time as the two jonin behind Kyoya watched her with near bloodthirsty eyes. She didn't like it at all. A benefactor. Mei finally spoke. You suspect me to agree to fund a war you started against an allied nation of Mizu no Kuni? She gave them a look that questioned their worth as living beings. Surely you can see how that makes no sense. We may have abolished the Yandame's capitalist regime, but we certainly have not begun the practice of altruism. There was no gain for Mei or Kiri, and it made her nervous how Kyoya still smiled at her. We are not asking for your assistance out of the goodness of your hearts, Mizukage Dano. We believe the terms are favorable indeed. Reaching into his kimono, he presented Mei with a scroll that was sealed by the Earth Daimyo himself. Breaking the seal, she glanced over it, before handing it to Ao to examine more thoroughly. And if we refuse? Mei asked. If Kirigakure wants nothing to do with this war, what then? Will Yort Tsuchikage respect our decision even if it's not the one he's hoping for? Kyoya smiled. Standing, causing Ao and Anko to tense in preparation to defend Mei if the man tried any funny business, he easily handed the Godame Mizukage what the Sandame Tsuchikage had ordered him to do if she was uncooperative. Mei took the second scroll the man had given her with a raised eyebrow. With ease she broke the seal, this time belonging to the Tsuchikage, and began to read. With each word she read from the scroll, her eyes widened, and she couldn't help the glare and copious amounts of killing intent she sent towards the IWA shinobi. How dare you? She whispered deadly, her tone so low that it actually sent a chill down Anko's back. While the snake user was a powerful jonin, Mei was a kage, and it showed as she stared at the vermin in front of them. It's simple, Mizukage Dano. Kyoya began in a nastily silky smooth voice. Do the right thing. The smile on his face said he felt he was untouchable, daring someone to start the shitstorm that would follow if he was at all harmed. A tense silence fell over the room. All shinobi presented to kill the other, and for a moment, it seemed almost a possibility worth exercising. And then, the sounds from outside the office filled the stiff air, causing everyone to look towards the door. With a raised eyebrow, the IWA kunoichi turned and opened the door and left, leaving to examine what the entire ruckus was. With a near unnoticeable nod of her head, Ao left the room, following close behind the black-haired woman. Clearing her throat, Mei began, only a fraction of her previous anger apparent. I don't know what you thought you'd prove by coming into my village and demanding anything from me, but I do not, under any circumstance, take kindly to threats. She spoke in her calmest, silkiest voice. Her expression and tone were almost too sweet, and slightly unnerving. Mei was considered powerful, even by kage standards. She had faced and fought Yugura, who was a Jinchuriki, to a stalemate during the civil war that wrecked Mizu. No one challenged or doubted her power and skill. Mizukage Dano, I don't think you're in any position to decline. Kyoya spoke with a voice that repulsed both Anko and Mei. You have no option but to comply unless, of course, you care nothing for the balance of power the Shodai Hokage created amongst us? In which case, Kiri may not support our war efforts, but we will definitely gain an asset. With a repulsive glance, Kyoya had the gall to smirk at her. And once Konoha falls to our might, his eyes flickered to Anko before falling back onto Mei, Kiri just might gain an enemy. Mei clenched her teeth, grinding them in frustration. With narrowed eyes, she began. I tread carefully, Kyoya-san. You are speaking to a kage. The auburn-haired woman warned. Ah yes, Kyoya started, a position given to you by Uzumaki Naruto. The bastard retorted. His methodical expression mixed with the excitement he was receiving for playing word games with the Mizukage morphed into something truly hideous. The fact that Naruto was the one to end the war might spark doubt within your people, Mizukage Dano. He quipped. And we should all know by now, his tone became deep and serious, it only takes a single spark to start a war. I highly advise you change your tone. A voice no one was familiar with spoke out, both surprising and confusing those who were still within the office. With slow trepidation, everyone turned to look at the window, which, somehow, was now open, and two figures stood next to one another. Why you're... Anko spoke with shock and, if she were honest, terror. If you don't, Senpai will murder you. You've returned alone. Uchiha Itachi spoke, his voice calm. Where are the others? He asked. Gaara slowly entered the kitchen his new subordinate sat in, bowing his head slightly to the man and woman his Shursho called brother and sister. Someone seems to have taken Sasuke's lover. The red-haired shinobi explained. They've gone to get her back, he stated before sitting down at the table, which was full of various snacks and beverages. I see, Itachi whispered. Outwardly, the Uchiha prodigy expressed absolutely nothing, his face the epitome of perfected stoicism. On the inside, however, he was a bit surprised. Sasuke, his precious younger brother, already had a lover? Itachi wasn't sure how he felt about that. A comfortable silence fell over the room. Yugao-san and Hyatt-san stood next to the stove, whispering about what they were going to do next weekend. Apparently, they both had the day off. Pushing that unimportant piece of information gathered via eavesdropping out of his mind, Itachi turned to Gaara to converse about something, but blinked in slight surprise. The previous Sunanin was fast asleep. His head lay peacefully on his folded arms. In the second that it took Itachi to blink again, he already understood. Naruto-senpai had told him about the sleep deprivation the Ichibi Jinchuriki suffered for the majority of his life. He'd probably take advantage of any situation he could to doze off if he was Gaara, too. Deciding to turn his attention elsewhere, Itachi stood and walked to the counter. He could better talk to the two people who were actually awake. Yugao-san, Itachi began, I was wondering if you could answer a question for me? Itachi asked politely. While he never really knew Hate all that well, he had served with Yugao for a few years, and he knew just how close the woman was with Naruto. He hoped that meant she knew the answer to his question. I'm not sure, but I can give it a try for my returned Kohai. Yugao slightly teased, smiling at the younger ninja who was listed in the bingo books as an S-ranked criminal wanted for the highest degree of treason and murder anyone could commit. Ever. Itachi brushed her attempts to rile him up away like a fly. Sasuke's lover, Itachi started. Who is she? He asked. His voice was serious and made Hate a bit uneasy. Yugao's playful smile vanished, and she stared at the Uchiha she knew as Karasu with curious eyes. Seconds passed by, and then minutes, before finally Yugao started. Haruno Sakura, she admitted. Her name is Haruno Sakura. She's a kunoichi who was in his class at the academy, and in his team when they graduated. Instantly Itachi's eyes softened, if only barely, but it was enough for Yugao's Anbu-trained eyes to catch. Ah, the Uchiha began, then it is okay. He spoke, more so to himself than anyone else. He would not allow a relationship with his brother, his only family left, that was based on preserving the Uchiha clan. He knew exactly who the Haruno were, and that they had a little girl who was in the same class as Sasuke. As an Anbu operative, Itachi had access to every citizen within Konoha's file, and had used that clearance to thoroughly research each and every one of Sasuke's classmates, as well as their immediate family. He may have been a tad overprotective. Maybe. But nonetheless, he knew who Sakura was, and he knew she couldn't have been a pawn of the council to help replenish the numbers of the Uchiha clan. He wanted his brother to find love, true love, and even though he was rather young, Itachi was glad that he had, apparently, found that love. A random thought popped into Itachi's head at that moment, and he found himself asking his question before he realized it. Does Naruto-senpai have anyone significant in his life? He asked. He remembered how close the blonde Anbu captain had gotten to the now Mizukage, and that had been when the kid was 7. He was almost hesitant to discover what he was up to now, 5 years later. Ah, yeah, well, Yugao tried. About that. Uchiha Itachi stood at the window of the Mizukage's office, his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan staring at the IWA-born shinobi within the room. His eyes were crimson, with 3 black, spiraling curves around a pupil, with a small 4-pointed pinwheel sitting atop. Dressed in a long, white cloak with red flicking at the bottom, the visage of Uchiha Itachi stared at Kyoya with a contemptuous glare, completely ignoring Kitsuchi altogether. You Uchiha. Itachi. Anko replied breathlessly. What the hell was one of Konoha's worst criminals doing here? That's when Anko noticed the person who stood beside Itachi. He was older, and definitely looked more mature, but Anko was sure that the man standing next to Itachi was in fact Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke's eyes had a black background, with 3 crimson intersecting ellipses, with 3 black, straight lines in the center. It looked like a starburst pattern altogether, and his stare looked confident, of course, but also relaxed. It's been a while, Anko, Sasuke said without even facing her. His tone honestly surprised Anko greatly. He was no longer that little gaki who wanted to take on the world for his single self-appointed goal. What is the meaning of this? Kyoya spoke, a bit outraged. Kitsuchi was already standing in front of the ambassador with a protective stance, his brows sweating slightly. Itachi was just as feared in Tsuchi no Kuni as he was in Hai no Kuni, or anywhere, for that matter. He was rather confident in his abilities, but Kitsuchi wasn't willing to test his theory on the traitor. Stop talking, Sasuke ordered with a powerful voice. Or stop existing, he added, causing Kyoya to gulp slightly. Without preamble, the door to the Mizuki's office opened once again, and everyone saw the kunoichi who had previously been in the room enter slowly, and backwards. She had an expression of both fury and terror on her face, and it caused Kitsuchi to frown. His daughter had never made that face before. I hope we're not interrupting anything. A calm, powerful, and oh so familiar voice spoke. While it was incredibly deeper, and belonged to someone who was now much, much taller than he had any right to be, it was still familiar. It was him, it was Uzumaki Naruto. And Naruto, Mei whispered breathlessly. It's been a while, Mizuki-sama. They stood atop a hill overlooking Kirigakure no Sato, gazing at the certifiable army that marched on the island village. IWA was invading, and no one knew it. Gilded eyes stared at the assembled enemies with eyes that could not be determined. Before, when he was younger, he would have snarled, glaring at the army that would dare touch what belonged to his woman. He would have rushed in with reckless abandon because he simply could. He would have laid them all to waste with a flashy show of his power, ruthlessly crushing them without preamble. But he wasn't a child anymore. It had been nearly 4 years since he left his home, and he changed more than any could ever imagine. Now, his eyes looked at the amassed shinobi from Iwagakure no Sato with pity, and a touch of sorrow. They were living, breathing beings that shared the planet they lived on, and now they rushed towards their death. In his gold eyes, he saw his fellow man walk to their graves, and that saddened him. Even if he would be the one to put them there. We are Hope's blade, Uzumaki Naruto spoke. Let us cut away the misery. With those words said, he and his Uchiha warriors vanished, heading towards the village. The others could handle Iwa's forces for now. He had something he couldn't wait to do. That's it for part 12. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.